The truck coughed twice and then caught, that old blue rattle that made the porch windows shake. I eased it into reverse, the bench seat sighing under me, and backed down the short driveway like I was carrying something fragile. The paint was more scratch than shine. The left rear fender wore a dent like a dimple, and the cab smelled faintly of motor oil and dust. I tucked it into our driveway like a promise I could keep. My name is Peyton Mitchell. I'm 45, a widow for 2 years, and I work as an admin assistant at the community college on the south side. I own this little house at the bend of a cul-de-sac, with a patch of grass I cut myself and an HOA that likes to send emails about mailbox paint. My daughter Georgia is 20 and still at home while she knocks out her general ed. She borrows the truck to haul thrift finds, dorm stuff for friends, and bags of soil when she decides the patio needs new plants. The truck belonged to her dad. Keeping it felt like keeping a piece of him that still ran. Georgia stood at the garage door with her arms crossed, hair in a messy bun, smiling with her mouth and rolling her eyes at the same time. "It's so loud, Mom," she said. But when I cut the engine, she leaned in the window and squeezed my shoulder. "I'm glad we didn't sell it." "Alternator and a belt," I said. The shop said keep the RPM steady for a week and it'll settle down. Across the circle, Lawrence Davidson watched us with his hands on his hips. Lawrence is on the HOA board, and he acts like the circle is his stage. His lawn is a shade of green my budget and the sun could never agree on. He gave me a tight, neighborly smile that didn't reach anything. I pretended I didn't see him and ran my hand over the cracked steering wheel pad where my husband used to set his paper cup on early Saturdays. He would thump the dash twice before turning the key, a private ritual that made no sense and somehow always worked. We carried in the box of fluids the shop had handed me, and a sack of filters I'd found on sale. Georgia went back out to sit in the cab, flicked the radio through 2 stations, and laughed at the static. "I'm taking this on Saturday, okay? Tessa needs to move her dresser." "Careful with the tailgate latch," I said. "It sticks." We ate spaghetti in front of the local news, the truck a blue hulk under the porch light. I rinsed dishes and went to get the mail, flipping past the electric bill and a coupon for tires. That's when I saw the orange slip shoved under the door, bright as a traffic cone. It was from the HOA, $250 fine. Violation: unauthorized vehicle in driveway. Note: please review neighborhood standards. Vehicles that detract from community appearance are subject to enforcement. I read it twice, then a third time. My eyes automatically did the stupid math they always do. What that was in groceries, how many hours of work, whether the water bill could wait a week. I felt a slow, hot flush crawl up my neck that had nothing to do with the sauce I'd been stirring. Georgia came up behind me and peered over my shoulder. "You're kidding." "I wish I was," I said, keeping my voice level. "It's registered, it's insured, it runs," she said, the words tumbling together. "It's our driveway." "Some HOAs don't like older vehicles," I said, hearing the tiredness in my own tone. "Or anything unsightly." I made air quotes I immediately regretted. She stared across the room, out toward the porch light glow. "Is it because of him?" She didn't say Lawrence's name, but she didn't have to. He was still on his front step, cell phone in hand, pretending not to be checking whether I'd found his slip. "I don't know," I said, though I did. I folded the paper and slid it into the catch-all tray by the keys. "It's late, we'll deal with it." We locked up and I went back to the truck one more time, sat on the edge of the seat, and put my palm on the steering wheel. The vinyl was warm from the day. I could picture my husband in his faded work shirt, the coffee ring he'd leave on that pad, the way he'd scold me gently for riding the brakes on hills. The grief didn't knock me flat like it used to. It pressed in, steady, like a weight reminding me I could still lift. Inside, I opened the folder where I keep the HOA stuff, bylaws, meeting dates, a list of who's on the board, and stared at the table of contents without really seeing it. The meeting calendar said the next open session was next Wednesday at 7. I shut the folder and slid it back. I'm practical. I keep lists. I pay what's due. That's how I've kept this roof, this kid, and this old truck running without going under. I told myself I'd pay the fine and be done with it, even if it stung. I believed that, right up until I heard what he called the truck in public. They had my driveway on the big screen like a mugshot, zoomed in on the dented fender, the rust at the wheel well, the truck angled just a little crooked because the curb isn't square. Lawrence stood at the front of the clubhouse room with a clicker and a stack of papers, acting like he was running a seminar. By Wednesday night, the folding chairs were full. Marley slid into the one beside me and set a napkin-wrapped cookie on my knee without looking at me. The air smelled like old coffee and dry erase marker. Someone's kid thumped a vending machine in the hall. I signed my name on the sheet and kept my head down. Reuben Dean, the HOA president, did his welcome in a soft voice, eyes on the agenda. He's the kind of man who fades into his chair. We'll go through landscaping contracts, pool keys, and then enforcement updates, he said. He avoided looking at me. Alina Gibson, the secretary, sat next to him with a laptop open and a neat pad of paper, hair tucked behind one ear, ready to type. Enforcement, Lawrence said, as if the word tasted good. He wore a navy polo with the HOA logo embroidered, and his lawn-tan arms were folded too high like he was posing. He clicked, and my blue truck appeared, sun glare on the windshield. A couple people made small noises, not quite words. We strive to protect property values, Lawrence said. Our bylaws are clear about maintaining neighborhood standards. We've received a complaint, several complaints, about an unauthorized vehicle that detracts from our appearance. He didn't say my name. He didn't need to. I felt the heat rise in my face. I could hear my heartbeat louder than the thermostat clicking. I took a breath and lifted my hand. Reuben saw it and looked at Lawrence like he needed permission to call on me. Peyton, Reuben said finally. You can respond briefly. I stood. The chair leg scraped, sharp as a shout. It's registered and insured, I said. It runs. I use it to haul yard waste and to help my daughter move. We park it in our driveway. Lawrence gave a laugh with no humor in it. With respect, that truck is trash, he said. He clicked to a close-up of the dent, then another of the tailgate with a streak of old paint. We have a standard. This sort of, he gestured at the screen, brings down the look of the cul-de-sac. Trash. The word landed like a slap. Marley's hand brushed my elbow, quick and gone. Chairs creaked. People looked at their laps, their phones, at the list of pool rules taped to the wall. No one looked at me. It was my husband's, I said, but my voice tilted, and I hated that it did. It's paid off. We're not... I stopped, swallowed. We're not doing anything wrong. Alina cleared her throat gently. Let's keep comments to the facts, please, she said, mostly to Lawrence. She didn't smile, but she met my eyes like a normal person. Reuben shuffled his pages. Okay, he said, cautious. We encourage neighbors to, work things out directly where possible. Lawrence, perhaps you and Peyton can connect offline to discuss bringing the vehicle into compliance. Compliance? The word sat bitter on my tongue. Lawrence was already nodding, gracious like a king dismissing a petition. We'll move on, Reuben said. He looked relieved, like a storm had skirted the edge of town. They talked about mulch bids and a broken light at the tennis court. I sat through it because leaving would have felt like giving him something. When it ended, Lawrence was surrounded by a little knot of people. Someone laughed too loud. Marley squeezed my shoulder. Want me to walk you out? She asked. I'm fine, I said. My voice was steady again. I folded the orange slip tighter in my tote until the paper edges bit my palm. I made it to the parking lot before the shaking started. The night was hot and smelled like cut grass. My truck waited under a street lamp, paint dull, steady as a dog that doesn't ask questions. I drove home with the window down and the radio low, the engine loud enough to cover my breathing. Georgia was at the kitchen table with her laptop open and a half-eaten apple, earbuds out the second I came in. "How bad was it?" she asked. "He called it trash," I said. I set my tote down carefully, like it held glass. Her face pinched, then smoothed. "We can sell it," she said, all in a rush. "If it stops all this, we can list it and—" "No," I said too fast. She flinched and I made myself soften it. "I mean, we don't have to make that decision tonight. I just don't want fights," she said, eyes bright. "I don't want to come home and see notices stuck in the door and him staring at us like we're doing something wrong." "I know," I said. I pulled out a chair. We sat without touching. The kitchen clock ticked. I told myself I'd pay it and be done. "Can you?" she asked. "With everything?" I did the math automatically. The answer was yes, but tight. "I can," I said. "But I don't like why I'm being asked to." She nodded and closed her laptop. "I'm going to bed." I couldn't. The meeting clung to me. The word he used like glue. I poured a glass of water and went to the drawer with the HOA folder. I pulled out the bylaws, heavy and stapled crooked, and carried them to the couch. The lamplight made the pages look yellow. I flipped through the table of contents and found the enforcement section. My finger ran down the lines, scanning. When sleep wouldn't come, I turned to page 17, and halfway down the first column, I found something that made me sit up straight. Page 17 wasn't pretty. The bylaws were typed in Times New Roman with wobbly margins, and somebody had underlined half the headings in blue ink years ago. But there it was, middle of the left column. No trailers, including but not limited to boat utility camper, may be parked on any street or driveway within the association overnight. Under it, a definition. Overnight shall be any period between 12 hours a.m. and 6 a.m. 2 paragraphs down, a section I'd never noticed because it had never mattered to me. Board member conduct. Any director who knowingly violates any provision of these restrictions is subject to enforcement at double the standard schedule and may be removed by a majority vote of the board. I read it twice, slow. The words clicked into place in my head like a set of sockets finding the right size. Georgia padded in from the hallway in socks, hair down, face soft with that end-of-the-day look. She curled next to me on the couch and peered at the page. "What?" she asked. "What is it?" I pointed. She read out loud, stumbling over the parenthesis. "Including but not limited to," she said, and snorted. "Who writes like this?" "Retired lawyers with a printer budget," I said. She reached past my hand and tapped the conduct line. "Double?" she said, eyebrows up. "If they're on the board," I said, "and they know better." We were quiet. The house hummed, the fridge kicking on and off. In my peripheral vision, I could see the porch light through the blinds and, beyond it, the faint shape of our truck. "You're thinking of the boat," Georgia said, not a question. "I'm thinking of the boat," I said. On weekends, Lawrence's son, Axel, backed a white base boat to the curb in front of their house, unhitched, and left the trailer sitting there like a guest that wouldn't take a hint. Sometimes they angled it partly over the sidewalk and moved it in the morning if someone complained in the Facebook group. More often, it just stayed. I'd seen it on my way to get donuts early on Sundays, taillights catching the dawn. I'd seen it when I left for work on Mondays before 7, the dew beating on the hitch. "You're sure it's Axel's?" Georgia asked. "He's the one who hooks and unhooks," I said. "And if it sits in front of Lawrence's house, it's their problem either way." Georgia reached for the paper and read the trailer line again, slower, like she was committing it to memory. "Do we tell someone?" she asked, like Alina. "We show someone," I said. "Pictures. Times." The rule. She let out a breath that was half laugh. Dad would have a field day with this wording, she said, flipping to the next page and back. He used to circle every typo on the plumber's flyer. He hated bullies more than anything, I said. I didn't mean to say it out loud, but there it was between us. The truck, the way Lawrence said trash, the hot embarrassment that made me want to make myself smaller, it all pooled into something heavier and more useful. Georgia leaned into me until our shoulders touched. He would tell you to measure twice and cut once, she said. And bring your tape measure, I said. It was his line, and we both smiled even if it hurt. I took the bylaws from her and set them on the coffee table. We're not going to argue, I said. We're not going to post in the group. We're going to stick to the words, the exact words. What if he gets mad? She asked, quiet. He's already mad, I said. I'm tired of paying for other people's moods. She bit her lip and nodded. Okay, what do we do first? Confirm what we think we know, I said. If the trailer's there overnight, I want timestamps, not guesses. Georgia lifted her phone. My camera app does it automatically, she said, and you can turn on location. Good, I said, but no standing in their yard, from our porch, from the sidewalk. We don't need his doorbell footage of us creeping around. She laughed, a real one. You creeping around is the least sneaky thing I can imagine. Rude, I said, and she laughed again. We made a plan like we were mapping out a Saturday errand run. Fridays and Saturdays were their boat days. That meant late returns. I work early, but Dawn isn't a stranger. I set my alarm for 5:40 a.m., then another for 5:55 in case I chickened out in my sleep. I put the bylaws back in their folder and slid the folder into my tote. I put the orange slip under a magnet on the fridge so I wouldn't pretend I'd dreamed it. Do we tell Marley? Georgia asked. Not yet, I said. She has eyes. If we need a witness, she'll know what she saw. Georgia stood, stretched, and picked up her empty apple core. I still don't want fights, she said at the doorway. I don't either, I said. That's why we're using their rules. She nodded. I'm taking the truck Saturday, she said, almost defiant, like she dared me to make her change the plan. Careful with the tailgate latch, I said, and she rolled her eyes and smiled, the argument diffused before it could start. I rinsed the 2 glasses in the sink and set the coffee maker for the morning. I checked that my phone had storage and that the date stamp displayed. The street outside was quiet, cicadas doing their late summer buzz. Lawrence's porch was dark. For once, that helped. At dawn, the coffee would be ready. I would crack our front door, camera open, and hold my hands steady. The first alarm rattled my nightstand at 5:40. Coffee gurgled in the kitchen. I slid into my slippers, cracked the front door, and let the cool air hit my face. The cul-de-sac was washed in that thin blue light that makes everything look cleaner than it is. There it was. The white boat trailer nose in along the curb in front of Lawrence's house, hitch angled toward the driveway. No truck attached, no one around. I lifted my phone, turned the sound off, and took 3 photos from our porch, wide, then zoomed enough to catch their house number and the street sign at the corner. 5:43 a.m. glowed on the screen. I stepped to the sidewalk and took one more, careful to keep our mailbox in frame as a reference. 5:46 a.m. I went back inside and set the phone on the counter like evidence. The coffee smelled sharp and warm. I poured a mug and stared at the timestamps. Between 12 high and 6 high, the bylaws had said. It didn't have to be midnight, it just had to be now. Saturday afternoon, Georgia took the truck to Tessa's apartment. She texted me a photo of the dresser strapped down with a web of bungee cords and a caption that said, "Tailgate latch still rude." I smiled in spite of myself and mowed the back strip of grass before the sun got mean. Sunday morning, I woke again before 6 and repeated the routine. The photos looked almost identical, dew on the metal glinting like sugar. 5:51 a.m., 5:59 a.m. Monday before work, same. 5:42 a.m. By then my phone had a neat little row of images, each more boring than the last, which is exactly what I wanted. Midweek, an envelope with no return address showed up in the box, the HOA logo stamped at the top. Reminder: trash and recycle bins must not be visible from the street except on collection day, it said. The form had a checkbox by observed yes, no date, no photo. Our cans live behind the fence except on Mondays. I took my own photo anyway, our side gate latched, the cans tucked away, the timestamp at 3:12 p.m. I slid the reminder into the same folder as the first orange slip. By Friday night, I was bone-tired, but back on the couch with the bylaws open to page 17, a sticky note flagging the trailer clause. Georgia hovered in the doorway. "You're sure you want to keep doing this?" she asked. "It's just photos of what's there," I said. "We're not knocking on doors." "You're scaring me a little," she said, honest and small. "Like you're poking the bear." "We're not poking anything," I said. "We're holding the line." She nodded, not quite convinced. The second weekend, I added video. A slow pan from the corner sign to the trailer to their mailbox, my voice low so I wouldn't breathe too loud. 5:48 a.m., Saturday, 12:07 a.m. Sunday. I couldn't sleep and heard the metal rattle when Axel backed the boat in late, taillights glowing. I lifted the blinds enough to catch the unhook and the walk back to the house. The clock on the stove blinked 12:09 when I set the phone down. Monday at 5:50, the trailer was still there, dew in tiny beads along the frame. Marley texted me on a Tuesday at 6:10. "He's moving it now." I stepped onto the porch with my phone. Lawrence was in a sweatshirt, glancing up and down the street while Axel backed the truck to the hitch. They moved with practiced hands, fast. The sky was just starting to pink. I shot 30 seconds of video showing the trailer as they lifted it, the hitch locking, the taillights flaring. The truck rolled away at 6:14, which was still inside the rules window. I didn't say anything. I saved the clip and named it with the date. That afternoon, an email pinged my phone while I was filing course schedules at the college. "Lawn height warning," the subject line said. The message was a template reminding me to keep grass under 8 inches. I checked the front yard on my lunch break. It brushed my ankles but wasn't even close to 8. I set my phone on the porch rail and took a short video with the measuring tape I keep in the junk drawer, a tidy 6 inches at the highest spot near the downspout. I forwarded the warning to myself and filed it with the rest. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote an email to Alina. Subject: request to be on agenda. Fine appeal and enforcement evidence. I kept it short. "Hi Alina, I'd like to be added to the next open meeting agenda to appeal a $250 fine issued for an unauthorized vehicle in my driveway. I'm attaching the relevant bylaw page, section on trailers and board member conduct, P-Bun 17, and time-stamped photos, videos of a recurring overnight trailer parked along our street in front of Lawrence's home, which appears to be in violation. Please confirm receipt and meeting date, time. Thank you, Peyton Mitchell." My address. I scanned page 17 at work earlier that day and used a highlighter on the printed copy when I got home, then took a clear photo of it to attach. I also dropped all the images and clips into a folder named Page 17 and uploaded it to a share link. I CC'd the general HOA email so it wouldn't get lost. Georgia stood by the sink drying a bowl. "Are you sending it now?" she asked. "Now," I said, and clicked. She pressed her lips together. "If he comes here, we call the police," she said. "I'm not opening any doors." "We won't," I said. "Our porch light is for people we invite." The reply from Alina came the next morning at 9:12. "Received. You'll be on the agenda for next Wednesday. Please bring any printed documentation. I've saved your attachments." Simple, professional. It eased something in my chest. At lunch, I mowed the front yard just so there'd be nothing to look at. I rolled the trash cans back behind the fence at 4 and took another photo of the gate closed, for my own sanity. When I got home from work the next day, an orange slip was tucked under the mat, bright as an insult. This one was shorter, stamped, "Second Notice." In bold at the bottom, "Tow notice pending." I held it by the corner like it might smear and added it to the stack. I didn't wait for Wednesday. After dinner, while there was still light on the sidewalks, I slid my phone into my front pocket with the voice memos rolling and walked across the circle. Lawrence answered on the second knock. Polo swapped for a gray sweatshirt, a glass in his hand that smelled like ice and something citrus. He looked past me at my driveway before he looked at me. "I'll be disputing the fine at the meeting," I said. I kept my tone level, like I was asking for a receipt. His mouth ticked. "Of course you can appeal," he said, pleasant as a brochure. "But in the meantime, you should learn the standards. We can't have eyesores sitting out." "It's not personal." "It got called trash in a public meeting," I said. That felt personal. He lifted a shoulder. "If the shoe fits," he said, then held up a hand like he was the reasonable one. "Look, there's a tow notice pending. We'll enforce if non-compliance continues. You'll save yourself trouble if you move it into the garage or better, off-site." "My garage has a water heater, shelves, and a lawnmower," I said. "The truck fits in my driveway. It's registered and insured." "We're not out of compliance." He smiled, not with his eyes. "You should review the bylaws," he said, which was funny, considering. "We'll see you Wednesday." "See you Wednesday," I said, and turned before I could say more than I planned. On the walk back, I noticed the curb. The concrete in front of Lawrence's house had a fresh strip of yellow paint along the edge, a hasty band about 3 feet long dead center between his driveway and the mailbox. No stencil. No parking letters. Just a rough, bright line, drips hardened in dots where the brush had overloaded. It wasn't there yesterday. The smell hit me, faint, like a classroom after art day. I took my phone out and snapped photos from the sidewalk, wide frame with their house numbers, close-up of the drips, the brush marks, the fact that the yellow didn't match the pale city paint at the corner curb cut. I crouched to catch the edge where the paint bled onto the grass. The sun had slipped and thrown long shadows. The photos showed that too. I kept my feet on public concrete and felt ridiculous checking where my toes were like I was on a balance beam. Marley's screen door squeaked and she stepped onto her porch with her mail. "You see that?" she called softly, chin pointing at the curb. "I see it," I said. "City hasn't been down here today," she said. "Frank on Elm's sprinkler tore up the strip and they were over there all morning." "They didn't come this far." "Thought so," I said. Back inside, Georgia met me in the kitchen, hands wringing a dish towel into a rope. "Did you talk to him?" she asked. "I told him I'm disputing," I said. I set my phone down and stopped the recording. "He said to learn the standards." She blinked hard, and then the tears just spilled. "I cannot do another fight," she said, voice catching on the words. "I can't, Mom. Not with a man twice your size on our porch telling us what to do." "I'll sell the truck. I'll sell my stupid plants. She sucked in air like it hurt. I pulled out a chair and she sat. I didn't touch her at first. I let the space breathe. "I don't pick fights," I said. "I bring facts. That's it." I slid the paper towel roll closer, and she grabbed two without looking. "What if he refuses to listen?" she said, muffled. "Then we don't force it," I said. "We have an exit plan, for the meeting and for here." She swiped at her face. "Like what?" "For the meeting. We sit near the door. If voices get raised, we stand and leave. We don't argue in the parking lot. We text Marley to walk out with me if you can't come. For home, we don't answer the door unless we're expecting someone. If anyone steps onto our porch to escalate, we call the non-emergency line. We document, we don't debate." She nodded. some color returning to her face. Code word? She asked, trying to make it lighter. Tape measure, I said. It made both of us smile a little. I set the kettle on for tea and cleared the table. Then I pulled out the fat folder and the stack of printouts from the printer at work. I slid everything into a cheap black binder I'd picked up at the dollar store on the way home. Clear front sleeve for the agenda, tabs down the side, fine notice, vehicle reg insurance, page 17, trailer photos, trash cans, lawn, curb paint. I titled each on a strip of masking tape. It felt silly and, at the same time, like breathing. On my laptop, I searched the city website for curb regulations. It took 3 tries and a PDF from a traffic engineering page, but there it was. Unauthorized curb markings. Permit required. Violators subject to citation and removal at owner's expense. I printed the page and highlighted the relevant lines. I added 2 of the curb photos and a note with today's date. 2 copies? Georgia asked, sniffing, watching me move. 2, I said. 1 to hand to Alina if they try to circle back, 1 to keep. My phone buzzed. Unknown local number. I put it on speaker and set it on the table. Peyton, this is Ruben, the voice said, small and careful. I wanted to confirm we have you on the agenda next Wednesday. We'll, hear you briefly before regular business. Thank you, Ruben, I said. I'll keep it concise. That would be appreciated, he said, relief bleeding into the line. We want to keep things civil. So do I said. He cleared his throat. Good. See you then? The call clicked off. Georgia let out a breath. Briefly, she said, rolling her eyes. Brief is fine, I said. I slid the highlighted page 17 into the center, pressed it flat with my palm, and closed the binder. The cover flexed and snapped. I tucked it into my tote, the weight of it familiar, like something useful you keep in the truck. I pulled the strap over my shoulder and stood. Armor, I said, half to myself. Tape measure, Georgia said back, and this time the smile reached both of our eyes. The meeting room smelled like dry erase markers and old coffee that had been burned and reheated. Fluorescent lights hummed. My hands left damp moons on my tote straps as I shifted the binder from one side to the other and picked a seat near the door, like we'd planned. I texted Georgia. In room. Near door. Tape measure. A typing bubble blinked, then a heart. Marley slid into the chair on my right and set a bottle of water by my knee. Brought you backup, she whispered, and nodded at my tote. I made 2 copies, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Ruben tapped the mic that didn't need tapping. We'll, call to order, he said, eyes down on the agenda. For tonight, we'll hear an enforcement appeal first before regular business. He looked at Lawrence like he was checking if that was allowed. Lawrence gave a little nod as if he were granting permission. Alina was already typing, fingers quick, a neat stack of agendas at the corner of the table and a roll of blue painter's tape holding down the extension cord for the projector. She met my eyes and gave a small professional smile. Enforcement, Lawrence said, stepping forward with his clicker. He wore another navy polo, the logo crisp, and looked directly over my head as if I were a chair. We're here to discuss a continuing violation on our street. Community standards require us to maintain the appearance of the cul-de-sac. It's our responsibility to protect property values. Click. My driveway filled the screen. The truck angled a little crooked because the curb isn't square. Click. A close-up of the dented fender. Click. The tailgate with the streak of old paint. A murmur rolled through the chairs. Repeat notices have been issued, Lawrence said. I tow notice pending. He didn't say it loud, but he didn't have to. My phone buzzed in my tote. I didn't check it. Junk trucks, someone muttered 2 rows back. Clay Lawson, Neighbor from around the corner, who always found an opinion to share at the mailbox, leaned to the side so his friend could hear him. He didn't bother to lower his voice enough. I kept my eyes on my folded hands and let the room get quiet again. Marley's knee bumped mine once. Quick. Reuben cleared his throat. "Thank you, Lawrence," he said, sounding grateful to be done. "Peyton, you requested to be heard." I waited a beat. If grief taught me anything, it was how to sit with discomfort without flinching. Then I stood so fast the chair leg knocked the wall behind me. The sound cracked through the room. Heads turned. "Let's keep it civil," Reuben said, immediately nervous. "I'm civil," I said. My voice was calm. It surprised me a little. I pulled the binder from my tote, the masking tape tabs neat down the side. "I'd like to start with the bylaws." Lawrence gave that same humorless laugh from last time. "We've all read the bylaws," he said. "Then this will be easy," I said. I stepped to the end of the front table, staying on the audience side, and slid one copy of the binder across to Alina. She put her hand on it like it might try to fly away and opened to the first tab. The clear front sleeve held the agenda. Behind it, page 17 was already flagged. "We're not here to debate opinions," I said. "We're here to apply rules." "You've been found non-compliant," Lawrence said. "This is a courtesy appeal." Alina shot him a look that said, "Not helping," and he settled a fraction. I kept my eyes on Reuben. "I listened at the last meeting," I said. "Tonight, I'm asking we read all of the relevant section, not the parts we like. All of it." Behind me, a chair squeaked. Clay whispered something again. I didn't turn. I could feel Marley next to me like a post you tie a line to. Reuben looked at Alina, then at the audience. "We can look at the language," he said, as if language were a stray cat. "Page 17, I said. "Trailers and board member conduct." A couple of heads lifted at that. Lawrence's jaw went tight. Reuben lifted his palms like he was smoothing down a blanket. "Okay," he said. "We'll allow some time to read." "Thank you," I said. The room was quiet enough to hear the building's air conditioner kick on and the clink of someone's bracelet. My fingers didn't shake when I flipped to the tab. Alina had her copy open, too. I saw her eyebrows go up a millimeter when she hit the second paragraph. She slid her laptop a little to the side so she could lean in. Clay's friend cleared his throat. Someone's kid in the hallway thumped the vending machine again. The world kept doing small, normal things while my heart hammered like I'd run here instead of driven the 5 minutes from home. Reuben looked back at me. "Proceed," he said, almost apologetic. I set my palm flat on the plastic sheet, felt the texture of the page through it, and took a breath. "Let's read all of page 17, I said, and slid my binder across the table. I flipped the plastic and read, slow enough that people could follow without feeling talked down to. "No trailers, including but not limited to boat utility camper, may be parked on any street or driveway within the association overnight. Overnight shall be any period between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. I paused and let the quiet hang. Then I moved my finger down to the next part, the one I'd circled in yellow. Board member conduct. Any director who knowingly violates any provision of these restrictions is subject to enforcement at double the standard schedule and may be removed by a majority vote of the board." Alina was already nodding, eyes flicking between the page and her notes. Lawrence shifted like his shirt had started itching. I slid 2 clear sleeves out of the binder and laid them on the end of the table, facing the board. "Photos and videos taken over the past 2 weekends, I said. Time-stamped between 5:40 and 5:59 a.m. on multiple days. The trailer sits in front of Lawrence's property, unhitched, until after 6 most mornings. There's a clip from Sunday at 12:07 a.m. showing it being unhooked." Lawrence cleared his throat. "It's temporary," he said, and forced a smile at the room. "We're in the process of arranging storage, and it's my son's, not mine. The rule doesn't make exceptions for ownership, I said, keeping my eyes on Reuben. It says any street or driveway within the association, and the conduct clause says knowingly. I tapped the word. This happens most weekends. It's visible from your front window. And on Tuesday, I slid another print. It was moved at 6:14 a.m. That's outside the window. We can watch the time in the top corner. Marley raised her hand from the audience. Reuben blinked like he'd forgotten other people were here. Yes, he said. I walk my dog at 5:30, Marley said, simple as listing milk on a grocery receipt. The trailer's there most Saturdays and Sundays. I've seen Axel unhook it. They started moving it closer to 6 after the last meeting. Alina held out her hand for the sleeves, and I passed them over. She studied the screenshots. Dates? She asked without looking up. Labeled on each file, I said. 2 weeks' worth. Lawrence's smile tightened. We don't need to nitpick, he said to Reuben. We should focus on the original violation, the, appearance issue at our street. Trash, I said quietly. I didn't look at him. He flushed, then pretended he hadn't heard me. Reuben rubbed the edge of the agenda with his thumb. Peyton, he said, cautious. The fine issued to you was for an unauthorized vehicle. Do you have anything on that? Registration and insurance, I said, sliding the copies to Alina. Photos of our driveway. No bylaw bans older vehicles. The unauthorized label is subjective. I slid the next tab. A photo of our side gate with the bins behind it. Timestamp. We received a reminder about visible trash cans with no date or photo. Here are mine, stored behind the fence. Next tab. A snapshot of a measuring tape in the front yard. A warning about lawn height. It measures 6 inches at the highest spot. The rule is 8. Clay made a small scoffing sound behind me. I let it pass. And this, I said last, laying the curb photos down like the final cards in a hand, is the curb in front of Lawrence's house. Painted yellow this week without city stencil or permit markings. The city code requires a permit for any curb markings. I've highlighted the section. I slid the printout from the traffic engineering page across. I took these from the sidewalk. You can see the fresh drips. Marley can confirm the city crew wasn't on our street that day. Marley lifted a finger. They were on Elm, she said. Not here. Alina exhaled through her nose, not quite a sigh. She turned the curb photo so Reuben could see the brush marks. We don't enforce city code, she said calm, but we can report. Lawrence shifted again. This is a lot of theatrics, he said lightly. We're here about one neighbor's noncompliance. We can't get distracted by personal grievances. I'm asking for fair application, I said. Same words, same rules, same consequences. The room went quiet in the particular way rooms do when everyone would rather be anywhere else. Reuben looked at Alina. She lifted one shoulder in a small, professional shrug that said, The words are the words. Reuben cleared his throat and straightened his papers like they'd been crooked. Okay, he said. We have an appeal on a fine for an unauthorized vehicle, and we have credible documentation of an overnight trailer in violation of section. He glanced at Alina. Page 17, she said. Page 17, he repeated. He looked at Lawrence. As a board member, you'll need to abstain from any vote concerning your own enforcement. Lawrence's jaw worked. Of course, he said. Reuben folded his hands. On the appeal regarding Ms. Mitchell's fine, he said, voice picking up a hint of resolve. I move that we reverse the $250 fine and remove the tow notice. Alina's pen hovered. One of the other board members, one I hadn't bothered to learn because they never spoke, lifted a hand. Second, she said. All in favor? Reuben asked. Hands went up around the table. Lawrence stared at the wall. Opposed? No one spoke. Motion carries. I felt my shoulders drop a fraction. I didn't smile. Not yet. Reuben cleared his throat again. On the matter of the overnight trailer, based on the photographs and videos provided, I move that we issue a fine to the responsible party per the schedule. He looked at Alina. Standard is $200, she said quietly. Double per conduct clause if board member knowingly violates. Reuben nodded. 200 becomes 400. Given the ongoing pattern documented, I also move that the board remove Director Davidson from his position effective immediately, per the conduct provision. He looked at the others as if to make sure he wasn't alone. Further, we'll notify the city about the unauthorized curb paint and require that the curb be restored to standard by Friday. The quiet stretched. Then the woman who'd seconded before spoke again. Second. All in favor? Reuben asked, and this time he didn't look at Lawrence. Alina raised her hand. 2 other hands went up. Reuben lifted his own. Opposed? He asked. Lawrence's chair creaked. He didn't speak. Motion carries, Reuben said, and you could hear the relief in it. For a beat, no one moved. Then Lawrence stood so fast the projector cord jumped. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at anyone. He walked out, and the door swung hard enough to slam the wall. The echo rolled through the room and died. Marley's hand found my elbow for a second, a small, firm squeeze. Alina slid my binder back across the table with the sleeves stacked neatly on top. I'll email you the formal reversal, she said, businesslike but not unkind. And a notice of the board's actions tonight. Thank you, I said. My voice didn't wobble. Reuben shuffled his agenda again. We'll, move on to pool key replacements, he said, because meetings always find their way back to the small stuff. I sat down. My hands were steady. Somewhere under my ribs, something that had been out of place for a long time slid back where it belonged. It felt like a bone knitting. I picked up my tote and set it by my feet, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe all the way out. 2 mornings after the meeting, I stood at the kitchen window with coffee and watched Lawrence crouch at his curb with a bucket and a scrub brush. The yellow paint came up in ragged curls, leaving streaks of gray concrete and his knees wet to the shins. A white city pickup rolled by once, the driver slowing long enough to look, then kept going. The boat trailer was gone. The space in front of his house looked like every other stretch of curb on the circle, which was the point. Georgia padded in, hair in a bun, sleep still on her face. She leaned on the counter next to me. He's really doing it, she said. By Friday, I said. They were clear. She watched a second longer, then turned to the sink and filled a glass. I'm not scared anymore, she said, almost to the faucet. You don't have to be, I said. At work, between intake forms and a professor who needed a room change, my email pinged. Reuben's name sat in my inbox like someone waiting in a doorway. Peyton, this confirms reversal of the $250 fine and the removal of any tow action. The board regrets the tone at prior meetings and appreciates your patience in working through the process. Reuben. Short. Careful. It did the job. A minute later, another email slid in. Hi Peyton, from Alina. Would you consider joining a short-term committee to review our enforcement process, documentation standards, communication, etc.? We're aiming for more common-sense fixes, date-stamped photos, no anonymous warnings without evidence, timelines that make sense, 3 meetings max, no pressure. I stared at the screen and thought about my binder and my blood pressure. I typed back, maybe, if meetings end on time and there's actual coffee. A smiley felt wrong, so I deleted it. She replied with, deal. That afternoon, Georgia and I loaded the truck with broken chair legs, a dead toaster, and 2 bags of clippings that had been slumped by the fence too long. The engine coughed and then settled into its usual noise. We rolled the windows down. Warm air smelled like cut grass and a little like oil. At the dump, we took our time, laughing at the ridiculous angle of one crooked chair. On the way back, Georgia tapped the mirror with one finger. "Can we put Dad's old air freshener back up?" she asked. "The pine one?" I popped open the glove box. The little green tree was still in there, edges curled a bit, the string knotted around itself. I untied it and looped it over the mirror. It swung once and settled, the ghost of pine mixing with the real smell of summer and truck. Georgia smiled at it the way you smile at something ordinary that's really not. When we turned onto our street, Marley was waiting on her porch with a foil-covered plate. She lifted it like a flag as we parked. "Offering," she called. We carried the cookies inside and leaned on the counter to eat them warm. "You handled that like a pro," Marley said, mouth half full. "If I ever get a ticket I don't deserve, I'm hiring your binder." "It comes cheap," I said. She pointed at my tote in its spot by the door. "It needs a name." "Armor," I said. "Page 17, she countered, and grinned. "I like that one." Georgia laughed. "Tape measure," she said. Marley set the plate down and lowered her voice. "City guy came by around 10, left a door hanger at the Davidsons. Guess someone called it in." "Reuben said they'd notify," I said. "I'm glad they followed through." We stood there a minute, 3 women in a kitchen with crumbs on the counter, the kind of quiet that feels earned. Marley tapped the truck keys by the bowl. "Keep parking where you belong," she said, then waved and headed home. We ate dinner at the table instead of in front of the TV. The truck sat under the porch light, blue and stubborn. Somewhere around 9, my phone buzzed. Alina had sent the formal letter for my files with the vote details and the date. She'd CC'd the general HOA email. No mystery, no missing paper. Clean. I slept hard. No alarms. No early photos. When the trash truck clanged down the street the next morning, I pulled our cans back behind the fence and latched the gate, habit and principle both satisfied. The circle was quiet. No trailer, no extra glow of someone watching from a porch. Around noon, there was a soft scuff at the front door. I opened it to find an orange rectangle on the mat. My stomach dipped before my brain caught up. It wasn't the HOA template. It was a coupon from the nursery up by the highway, 10% off mulch this weekend only, tucked in a note that said, "Thought you might need this. Neighbor." No signature. The handwriting was careful, like someone who didn't want to get it wrong. I turned it over and smiled. Communication delivered. No threats attached. I stuck the coupon to the fridge under the magnet that had been holding the tow notice. The magnet looked better that way. That evening, Georgia held the screen door while I backed the truck into its spot. Tires straight, tailgate latched. The porch light threw a clean pool on the hood. "Looks good," she said. "Belongs here," I said. "We pay our dues. We cut our grass. We bring our cans in and keep our porch light for people we invite. I keep the binder by the door and the air freshener swinging just enough to notice. The street stays quiet, and when it isn't, I know which page to turn to and how to hold the line.